Hey there, welcome to Be Unmessable with the podcast. I'm Josselyne Herman-Saccio, your host, and today my guest is Justina Adorno. She's a native New Yorker. She studied performing arts since she was 13 years old, and she found her passion in telling stories of the underdogs. And she's had a lot of successes, including award-winning series like 7 Seconds on Netflix, working with executive producer Eva Longorio in ABC's Grand Hotel, also working alongside Edward J. Olmos in FX's legendary Mayans MC. And she realized through all this work that the real underdogs were the animals. And she has a passion for animals. She speaks for the animals. She has, throughout her professional career as an actress, she has learned the importance of speaking up for the animals. And she's now co hosting PETA's podcast, Just So You Know. And I am so excited that she said yes to my invitation. She used to be my client when I managed her acting career, and we are still friends, and I just love her so much. So thank you for saying yes. Welcome, Justina.
Of course I'm gonna say yes.
I was so happy though because we haven't talked in a little while, but
I
it seems
know.
like we created a bond that just is forever. So that makes me happy.
Yes, our bond is unmessable, and we haven't talked in forever, and it makes me sad, but I always think about you. Truly, always, always.
Yeah, and I think about you too, and I'm so proud of you. As I was saying before the show, when we were talking about everything that you're doing with the animals, because that was way back when I used to represent you. One of the things we talked about your passion and how to create that within your career rather than separate from it. And now it's like my vision for you is coming to fruition. So I'm thrilled for you.
Thank you. I know I was always trying to figure out how to collaborate the two. And I didn't, and I would never consider myself like a super political person. Like I always try to take myself out of it because I tend to see both sides of everything. So I never want to like get involved. And I'm like, actually, I feel both sides. But when it comes to animal rights, I mean, it's a no-brainer for me. Like, leave them alone. And it took me a while in my journey because when we were working together, I wasn't vegan yet, and I was striving to be. Um, and I think it actually happened that year. And so I was trying to figure out how do I use my voice for the animals and still like
But
be
I
artistic.
remember when you booked Grand Hotel, you
I
were
was
vegan because
vegan.
I sent you
Yes.
a vegan cake and I had to like
Yes.
find that sucker in Miami. I was like, where am I going to get a vegan cake delivered?
Which was delicious. I will never forget that cake. I was like, oh my God, no, I'm eating too many cakes. It was like cake, cake, cake every day.
So
But I
funny.
was
So
I
tell
was
us.
vegan then, yes. I was
Yeah,
vegan
that's right.
inside
Yeah, I
then.
do. I remembered that because I remembered the vegan cake thing. So tell us about your journey and how you ended up being an actor and such a passion for animals. Kind of like give us a thumbnail sketch of the path.
I mean, I've always been an intuitive person. And I've always felt misunderstood and just hyper aware since I was a kid. Like my parents, they were very, very young parents, and I was very much in the business. And I felt like I just knew too much and I felt too much. At least, like, that's what I was being told. Like, I'm too much, too much. And it wasn't until like I started to find like my voice and groundedness whenever I would do performances in school. And, I was like, oh my God, I think I really like telling stories. Like people finally listen to me and like can feel the passion that I have when I tell stories. And along with animals, like I was always being told, like, don't touch that cat or stay away from that horse. But I was always gravitated towards them. And I picked the route of, acting at a very young age. I studied acting and in high school. And before that, in middle school, I was in like a leadership program, which talked always about leadership in different arenas. And I always considered myself a leader, being like the firstborn, it's like I'm an instant leader. And so, like, I just listened to the universe guiding me on like what felt right for me. And then, acting just kind of like was always there for me. Acting was like my
Mm.
best friend. Theater, like if I was going through something at home, there was a theater show, or there were, a performance I could audition for. And so I always just like took that route and manifested a boarding art school, which I studied acting in, which had its pros and cons, but I never quite figured out the animal thing. I
Mm.
struggled with like wanting to go vegetarian since I was in high school when I first learned about what happens in the slaughterhouses. And even though I had like support, I didn't really have like role models and like an actual community that were lived the same way that I was like aspiring to live. And I didn't even know it was even achievable. I was like, who are these people that like
The elusive
don't
vegans.
yeah. I was like, you know what? I like tend to fit into like what society calls like the weirdo world, but you know what? I feel like something about me like I never really fit in anywhere. Like I'm never like a one like circle person. But I do connect with people who feel misunderstood, uh, and ostracized and just devalued. Like I always want to help people feel seen. And so like here comes you coming along in my career. Like I've had some successes and then we met and you were like my fairy godmother. I'll never forget that day. You were like, I know I am gonna leave. I just want to talk to you. And like you left and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna sign with her. Like she believes in me. She sees me, which
Yeah.
is kind of like the through line of what I'm saying. Like I
I can
think
hear it now. Yeah.
right, being seen is so important and I think it's so relevant in most everyone's journey, you know, like it's very lonely and can be very isolating when you don't feel seen. So it's important to connect with those who actually see you. And you know, I got that series regular role with Grand Hotel, which completely changed my life and like blew the lid off of like the stigmas everyone around me kind of told me that existed. And
Mm.
even like right before I booked that, do you remember like we talked about it and you were like, well, maybe it's not this year. And I was like, no, damn it. It's this year. And I auditioned for almost every pilot that year, which
I
was a
know
blessing.
that was a blessing, and and you're a great actor, so it was a matter of time. It wasn't going to be a matter of if; it was going to be a matter of when, as far as I was concerned, as your manager at the time. So I'm
Right.
happy it happened sooner than later, though.
I know. I was like, no, it's happening now. I have no patience. And it did. And it's kind of like what you were teaching me about, like being resilient and just like manifesting that magic within yourself. And I was just like, absolutely not. Abracadabra now.
Bam! Exactly.
Exactly. And like within like the entertainment world, I found ways to speak up for the animals and just ask for vegan cruelty-free makeup and hair products and so on and so forth. And I have been really lucky that every set I've ever been a part of has respected those wishes and has embraced it. And there's always been a vegan chef on every set I've been on. I'm like, what? It's
That's
just been like
crazy.
I know it's just been incredible. And even like the last show I worked on, Mayans MC, our showrunner, Elgin James, is vegan. Him and his wife are vegan. And there was always like a completely vegan menu. And like our gifts were like always vegan, like based, like not like vegan, but like, it's Converse,
Animal
and
friendly, and
right,
yeah.
right. It just so happened to be vegan. It wasn't like only a vegan brand. It's like, no, this brand happens to have vegan products, and that's what we're going to go with. So it's been beautiful. And long story short, I've always tried to like figure out like which organization I want to work with, which is all of them. And I finally stepped up my game last year and I went to a pig vigil, which is where trucks of animals come to the slaughterhouses and then they go to be slaughtered. But there's the activist community comes out and like gives them a moment of kindness and gives them some water, gives them some food, and kind of captures the humanness in them.
Yeah.
Like sees
Yeah.
their eyes, like these pigs have like blue eyes, green eyes, brown eyes, hazel eyes. Like they're beautiful creatures, and they're not like these like caricatures that we've created to just like dehumanize them. So I actually showed up to one and I was so happy. Like that was the day that no trucks were there. I was like, oh my God. Thank God I couldn't have handled it. I couldn't have
I know,
handled
I
it.
was going to say, you looking in the hazel eyes of a pig that was about to be slaughtered, I don't think I would want to
Girl,
see that. No.
I would have lost it, and that's
Yeah.
what took me so long to step it up in my activism game. But that moment really helped me remember that there are so many people who are doing it, and I'm like, wow, these people are unmessable. Like they are not gonna waver from the message, and you know they're selfless. They're not going, oh, how am I gonna feel? They're like, these animals are gonna die. I'm going to show up at 5 in the morning and give them some water and at least show them some bit of kindness. And so, like, that's where it kind of blew up. I like someone else saw me speak at the vigil in New York, and it just so happened to be a strike in the entertainment industry. And she was like, I want you to speak for National Animal Rights Day in New York. And I was like, amazing. I want to form community there. And I met my now co-host that day. She also spoke on National Animal Rights Day, Jamie Logan, and we just hit it off. Like,
That's
I
so
went to
great.
her podcast. She needed an acting coach, and I was like, I have my BFA in acting, would love to help you. And then she was like, do you want to co-host PETA's new podcast with me? And I was like, yeah,
Hello,
yeah. I'm like, I'm a talker,
abracadabra.
abracadabra. I was like, this strike, damn it. And to be honest, I've been like kind of burnt out with the entertainment industry. The material's just not what I would love it to be, or at least those pieces are not coming to my lap. So I'm grateful I got to pivot and like fulfill my soul in a different way. And then another acting opportunity came into my lap. So I'm like, whew, I just have to remember to just like trust the process and step back and just like do what I love.
Yeah, and part of burnout, Justina, I coach a lot of people in burnout. Part of the source of burnout oftentimes is being disconnected from who you really are and your
Mm,
vision outside of your own career, which can get very myopic and almost like picking a scab at some point. When you shift the focus to what really lights you up, like the difference that you can make with animals, like you've been doing with the podcast, it revives that burnout. It puts the flame back, you
right,
know, that has been
right.
burnt out.
It really
So
has.
yeah, and that happens for so many people. And all it is really being conscious of the disconnection,
Mm,
because you can reconnect yourself at any moment by just shifting the focus from going down and in to up and out. It's like, what do I really want? What am I really committed to? Oh, and how is this a pathway to fulfill on that?
mm.
So the content of the script might not be exactly what you imagine, but the opportunity of the project will empower you further to fulfill your vision, whether it's for the animals or for the world.
So true. I often lose that insight sometimes,
We all do.
but
And it's
right,
it's one of those things it's like a muscle. You just stop exercising it and then it gets flabby. So you just got to get back
right.
to the gym on the
I'm
vision. Keep your eye on the
Vision
vision.
Gym.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
given this is called Be Unmessable With, and you know me pretty well, I always like to ask people about a time in their life when they were dealing with something really challenging, like a circumstance that was challenging to the point where it could have taken them out of the game, so to speak, but it didn't. And they were
Mhm.
able to be resilient and emerge and transcend those circumstances and emerge what I call being unmessable with. So tell us about a time like that for you.
Oh my goodness. I feel like I've had so many unmessable moments. Right now, I want to be unmessable. I feel like I'm at a place where I feel like I might be needing to triumph, like I just said, like recently, I just feel like I'm so disconnected with any type of audition I'm getting. I just did a short film that's going to be premiering at the Chelsea Film Festival, and during that process, it was so meta. Like the topic that I was kind of like hitting on, which is kind of about oppression and suppression, and just unhealthy relationships. And I found myself in an unhealthy situation with someone on set that I didn't have necessarily the luxury of choosing to be a part of my crew. I trusted someone else, and I was feeling bullied on my own set, on
Yeah.
my own film. And there were so many moments where I almost just wanted to quit. I took a moment in the bathroom and I was like, this is crazy. Like, I'm manifesting what I'm talking about in this film, and it's happening in real life to a certain degree. And I just felt like so unsupported in every single way. And I just couldn't believe it that I'm like 33 and I'm like, I feel like I've gained so much experience. I've had so many tribulations in my personal life. And here I am still feeling silenced, feeling unseen,
Mm,
and feeling like I'm being forced to be small. And I just remembered going, okay, I can either react to this, and I'm not sure how that's going to look. And I didn't want to disrupt the energy that was being created on set even further down a dark path.
yeah,
And I was like, okay, or I can just be as professional as possible and get through the day because we only had one day to film. And so I did that. I just tried to channel whatever emotion I was going through into my art, and just remember that, like, sometimes leaders aren't loud and rah, yeah, let's go. Sometimes they're quiet and they're holding it down for the team.
yeah,
And I that's what I had to do, and it was a very sensitive topic for me, and it was a sensitive moment for me, and there was so much going on, and I just had to go, you know what? This needs to be done. It doesn't matter how I feel at this moment. It matters about what the goal is, and the goal is
yeah.
to get this done. And I did it. Um, Maybe not in the way that I would have particularly would have loved. Um, but we got this stuff done. So we'll see in October if I'm fully happy with how we filmed it. But yeah, it was so hard for me because honestly, like, it really pains me whenever I'm being challenged about who I am. Because I would say I'm a very bubbly person. Like, I
Yep.
think you know that. Like, I'm very like high energy, bubbly, bubbly, but I also feel very deeply. And when that high energy, positive flow is disrupted, I will be the very opposite. I would be very angry that someone is interfering in my bubble. And I've been trying to re-armor that shield again, because for whatever reason, the past few years, I mean, I know the reasons, but for the past few years, that has been chipped away. And so it's very
Yeah.
easy for other energies to come and interfere with mine. But yeah, I did it, and I guess I was unmessable with because I could have taken a different path. Um, and it's a learning experience. Like, afterwards, I was like, you know what? Thank you. Thank you so much, God,
For this
universe.
opportunity to develop myself, because you're going to be confronted with people like that in the future. There are
A
people like that
thousand
all around the
percent.
world. And so, how do you be who you are in the face of anything and anyone that life throws at you? That's what it looks like to be unmessable with, not to have perfect
Right.
circumstances and the perfect crew and the perfect story and the perfect script and all of that is not.
Right.
You don't need to be unmessable with if that's all in place, you know?
Exactly. And sometimes I forget that just because, like, I always have like a certain, maybe it's a high expectation. Duh. Most of us have high expectations, right? But I always have like I always want everyone to have um a good time and feel good. And when I feel like someone else is actively going against that towards me, I'm like, what? It kind of shook me up a little bit because I was like, this is my set. I've always had amazing experiences on set. Why is it that mine is the one that I'm having this
Well,
difficult time with?
if you want me to offer my view on it,
Sure,
do you?
sure.
Okay. I would
Yes.
say you created that, not like,
Mhm.
your fault that that happened, but you allow the space for anything that isn't resolved in your life until you resolve it.
Right.
So it's like in relationships. If you have a relationship and the person doesn't pay enough attention to you, you're going to have that over and over again until that's complete for you and you're no
Right.
longer messable with about it. So whatever you're incomplete with,
Hmm.
messes with you.
Right.
So
You know,
including, yeah, go ahead.
no, no, I was gonna say, what's crazy is that like and I my producer is gonna be like, oh my God, she calls me out. I'm not gonna say his name, but I had confronted him about it, and I was like, it's not your fault. I said it's mine. I said, but the voice you put in my head about making sure everyone feels appreciated, da 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 da, got in my head, and I all of a sudden started playing a people pleaser role, which
Yeah.
is something that like I just it's not the role I play. Like, it's just not.
Well, it's a messable with world because the
Hmm.
when I say messable with, I mean the world of reaction versus the world of creation. So like you
Right.
said, in that moment you could have reacted. Now, I would go a little bit deeper. I think you did react. You were still in the
Hmm.
world of reaction. You were just making the best of it, which is a
Right.
little bit different than creation. So you survived the
Yes.
day. Yeah,
Yes,
and that, if I were working with you as a coach, I would say you were still in the world of being messable with. You just
for
took the
sure.
glass half empty. I mean, the glass half full perspective so that you could make it through. And many people are very good reactors, especially if you're an effective, productive, successful person. You have to be good at reacting because
Hmm.
stuff is coming at you. And you need to
Right.
put out fires and you need to be able to pivot and do things like that. But the world of creation, as you know, is a very different quality. It's that space of magic and that space of
Yeah.
dreams and vision. And that, in that situation, I don't think you actually moved to that space. You were
Yeah.
still kind of dealing with the mud of it, putting
Yeah.
icing on it, calling it a cake, but it wasn't really a cake. And it sounds to me, I mean, I know I told you I would offer you coaching if you wanted it. It sounds like that's something that might be an area to develop yourself in because, like you said, I'm putting my armor back on. That to me is a red flag. Like,
Mm.
no, 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 that's not what. First of all, you should never have armor on. Like
Right.
who you are as this vulnerable, loving, open heart is what makes you who you are. The minute you put
Right.
armor on, you're reacting to
Mm.
protecting yourself from some external force, right?
Right.
So tell me what it is that you wanted coaching in, and let's see if it has a parallel to this. Because if you didn't want coaching in that, that's where I would definitely say we should talk about in addition to whatever you wanted coaching in.
I've learned so much. My best friend says this about me all the time. She's like, Justina, you're a very strong, sure of yourself person. A lot of the times, no matter what, if someone loves you, they care about you. Thank you. That
Life
that
happens. There are
life
packages,
happens. This is
everybody.
what's going on. I'm going to France. I need some things.
That's right. And we're meeting in Paris for coffee
Yes,
or some
we
vegan.
are.
I know some vegan places, sort of, but not really. That's not my thing, but I'll find one for you.
Yes, well, I know so many places in Paris
Uh,
actually. But anyway, she says, sometimes without them knowing or with them knowing, they want to make you smaller because then they start feeling comfortable about themselves. And I got myself in a situation a few years ago that kind of touched on that, and then I just haven't been able to get myself out of that. And I used to be such a I don't give a shit and like cut off, move on type of person. And I don't know if it's age, I don't know if it's just exhaustion. I don't know what it is, but it's
yeah.
been very difficult for me to be, oh, I'm gonna cry, that like sparkly firecracker as I used to be without being so like aware of like other people's feelings. And I'm like, since when? Like, of course I care about other people's feelings. That is a
Yeah.
duh. I always do. But since when do I prioritize that theirs above mine? And
Well,
I've been
tell
finding
me the
myself that way.
consideration. Like, if you look at you being that sparkly, bubbly light, and then you have some consideration, like, what is that gonna do to other people, or what is the consideration?
What do you mean?
Like, what's your concern about being that way? That you're not being that way. Like you're dousing your flame.
It's so true. I don't That's a good question. I've been trying to ask myself that. The easy the easy non-thinking answer would be because I don't want to be looked at as um any way that's not myself, you know? Because I feel like sometimes if I'm strong and I know what I want, especially as a woman, I'm often looked at as like a bitch or, disrespectful or selfish. But at the end of the day, like it's my life and I'm just being honest. But I've been like, I don't know, I feel like the past few years just been like getting conditioned to think that like, you know, equal, like and like for me, I'm like, no, me, I'm for myself, not that I'm above anybody else, but for myself, I am my biggest priority. And I've just been feeling like that I haven't been prioritizing myself in the way that I usually do with my happiness, regardless of how it's going to make other people feel. Just like, I guess I'm scared sometimes of losing people. Like I've been like, I've never been afraid of that. I actually don't care if I lose people. But lately, I think it has to do with age. I'm not sure. I
It
get
could be,
worried
but
about
something
losing people.
happened. But something must have happened. When did you start being concerned about this?
Um, I feel like it's been since like, I don't know, like maybe around the pandemic, like since
Okay.
2020. I don't
So
know.
did
It's just
something happen? Like if you look back, kind of just conjure up 2020,
just
and was there
unhealthy
a situation?
relationships.
So there
Just
was some
unhealthy
situation you were
relationships.
in that was
Yeah.
unhealthy. Okay.
Yeah, and it's just been like perpetuating. Like I feel like it's like you said the lesson. I guess I haven't learned it. I
Well,
don't know.
I would say that something happened and now you made something up about it. Like you decided something about
Mm,
yourself or about people or about life or about what was acceptable or not acceptable or safe or not safe. And that decision is the lid on your self-expression.
I
Once you
know.
get complete with whatever that decision is and you see that it's not the truth, it's something you decided and then believed, those kind of things mess with people. It's one of the top things that messes with people. I've worked with over 200,000 people in the last 30 years coaching them. And that is one of the biggest
Hmm.
things. That's what messed with me with my
Mm,
music career. I believed you couldn't do your art as your career. So that was the lid on my life.
mm.
So there's some decision you made when you were in that relationship, and whatever happened, happened. I'm not going to ask you what happened. It's fine. You don't have to say. But whatever happened, what did you decide?
Yeah. I guess I mean, it's not just in relation, it's all relationships, professional, family, romantic, friendship. I think it's so funny because it's all connected. Like
Yeah.
whenever I fight for myself, I get so much resistance, right? It's insane. Like no matter what the circumstances are. And I guess I'm just so tired of fighting that it's kind of taken away my energy. It's taken away.
Yeah. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's exhausting. And that's the impact of it.
Yeah, it sucks because like I know how powerful I am and I know how good intended I am and I just I'm sick of myself for allowing other outside voices infiltrate my spirit.
Well, I think I can support you with this. So let me talk to you a little bit, okay? Fighting for yourself, fighting for the animals, fighting for the underdog. It's that theme, right? There's something
Right.
that you're up against that's opposite you and it's
Yeah.
pushing and you got to push against. So that's inherently exhausting.
Yeah.
Right? So if you think of the whole fighting thing, and if you looked, and we're not going to do it on the podcast, but if you want to, I'm certainly happy to do a separate call with you to look when that got created. It was probably when you were little and whatever. At some point, you were like, I have to fight to be heard, to
Right.
be seen. I have to fight, whatever it was. And that became what I call the lens through which you're looking at life. So if you had glasses on and they were blue, everything would have a shade of blue. So even if I brought in a
Right.
yellow car, you'd be like, no, 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 it's green. What are you talking about? That is not yellow. That is green because the lens is blue. So if your
Right.
lens is, I have to fight, everything shows up as something to fight against or fight for.
Hmm.
And if you kind of look at your life, you could probably see a lot of that, like, I'm going to fight for this or I'm going to fight against this. And
Right.
that's like the flavor of your life. I call that the context
Mm.
because it's not actually what's happening. It's the background or like in the context number, I'm holding up my pointer finger, that's a 1, but in the context body part, it's a finger. So
Right.
it's not what's actually happening, the content of your life, the
Mm.
relationship, or what the person says or does. It's the color, it's
Hmm.
the context, which lives in language. So in language, you created at some point, I have to fight.
Right.
And now that became the color of your life. So the good news, I mean, the bad news is that became the color of your life, and now you're exhausted and it's upsetting and all of that. But the good news is you created that.
Right.
It's not real like this cup.
Right.
It's not a physical thing. It's not like you have one leg and you have to deal with it. No, this is a conversation that has been so prevalent for probably 25 years that it seems really real.
Right.
So the thing about context is they're malleable, they're alterable. You can create a new context, a new lens to view life for so through. So I was coaching this woman, this was a long time ago. She worked for the American Cancer Society, right? And she was in charge of fundraising. She's a very successful fundraiser. And her whole mission was to fight cancer,
Mm.
right? And that's what she got people to give money for, and blah, blah, blah. So I led this course that she was in, and we altered the language from fighting against cancer. Because if your life is about fighting against anything, you got to always have a fight.
Right. It's
So
true.
it's just inherent. I mean, so she was like, okay, well, what if I now were standing for well being?
Mm.
There's a big
Right.
difference between fighting against cancer and standing for people's well-being. She's tripled the amount of money she raised in the next year just out of altering that language.
Well, I know
Another,
language has always been
it's
like the
so
worst for
powerful.
me. I
Well, it's
know. And I know that it's powerful. And sometimes I guess it's like I'm not practicing my practices that I need to do.
well, it's all muscle memory. So you have a default lens called I've got to
Right.
fight. So that's going to be there by default. Now you have like this atrophied little muscle that's like so weak called I'm going to standing for some possibility, whatever it is, and we're going to create it right now. So you have something. But until you create that other road to go down, all you have is the reaction.
Right.
So it's not your fault, and it's just a lack of muscle. That's all it is. So now let's create a new context so that you have some place to go and practice, exercising a new muscle. So if you put all the fighting to the side and the relationships and the circumstances and all of that, and you look in a different direction, you kind of look up, Justina, and you look at, what do I really want for people, for life? What do I want my legacy to be? Like when you're dead and gone, what do you want people to have access to that you contributed towards that access?
Like literally, like a physical or like adjectives.
You tell me and we'll work it through. It'll be more spatial, but sometimes you have to get there first through the physical.
I guess like when I'm dead and gone, I want people to have access to, you said? What people have
Yeah.
access
Like
to?
what experience do you want them to have of life? That's
I
kind of what
want
I'm looking
them,
at.
yeah, I want people to feel like safe. I want people to feel true community, non-judgmental vibes. And
So like
I just
acceptance.
acceptance, yeah, acceptance. And I sound like a pageant queen, but like a true pageant queen. I just want there to be more peace,
Yeah.
like I like you said, like I feel like I've always like been having to fight for something, fight for myself, fight for the animals. I just don't want there to be any need for fighting. I want there to just be understanding, compassion, and just peace, you know?
Yeah. So if we look at all of that, it's very good. By the way, just another example. I used to work with the UN in my nonprofit, and I remember meeting a conflict resolutionist at an engagement at the UN, and I said, "Oh, so you must be committed to peace?" And he said, "No, that would put me out of a job."
Wow. You know,
So
that's true. A lot of people who are fighting for peace, I wonder, I'm like, what are you going to do after that? You know, that's why I'm like, I don't care. Like, I want to be like not having to fight for peace. Like, then
yeah,
we can all just
exactly.
like sit on the beach eating mangoes. Like, that's
Except
okay.
I'm allergic to mangoes, but I'll eat something else. So
What?
if you, yes, I know it's such a shame. Quel dommage. But so if you keep your eye on that vision of, and I'm going to say some of the things you said, and you kind of tell me what resonates the most with you. So peace, safety, community, acceptance, understanding.
Hmm.
Of those words, if you picked like two or three, what are the most kind of popping out to you, to your heart?
Peace and understanding, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, I think so too. Right. So if you now create a context, a game called Peace and Understanding is my vision. That's what I'm here to manifest. That's what I'm here to presence. That's what I'm here to facilitate, right? Not just for you, but for all people, right? But it includes
Hmm.
you. It's
Yeah.
not limited to you, it includes you. Then in those moments when you're being messable with and going down that road of fighting, the first thing is you got to be aware of it. I'm going to send you a workbook to kind of help you with like this little methodology, but you got to
Okay.
see it and then pause it and then go down the road of peace and understanding. So, what's an
Mm.
action you could take in those moments that would presence peace or understanding or both, or would get you towards peace and understanding? What's like an actual action you could do in those moments of reacting? You rewire your brain to go down a different road because now you have a different road. You didn't have one before.
Hmm. I'm trying to think of a general thing.
Yeah,
My first instinct was like to bust out in song just to cut the tension,
you
or
could
just
do that.
or ask a question. You know, like, "Hey, how are you?" You know, but sometimes the doing that to the wrong person could start more of a conflict. So,
It's good to come up with like three actions so you have one that would fit any situation, right?
yeah, right.
So,
I'm
and it
trying
could
to
be
think. I wish I knew, or else I would do it. I'm like, I don't
well,
know.
let's look at the situation on set. Let's just take that as
Right.
a thing, right? So there you are reacting. You're in the bathroom. You're all messed up. Like, okay, I'm just going to get through this, which is more reaction. So if you were to shift to, okay, my job is to create peace and understanding, that's what I'm committed to. I'm not committed to surviving. I'm committed to peace and understanding being present for all people. So what action could you have taken? I know we can't go back in time,
Right.
but what
I
what
guess
would be a possible?
I could have pulled the person aside and have gently asked, you know, are you okay? Like, what's going on? I want to make sure you're comfortable and you're enjoying your time on set. Like, is there anything you want to share with me?
And that would be so perfect, Justina, inside of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a perfectly correlated action, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what would be another possible action? Let's just, brainstorm so you have a few.
On set, maybe I could have said, you know what, everyone, can we pause and can we just like shake it out? Because I need to shake it out. I need
That's
to
right.
shake it out. I need to breathe. Can we all breathe and just, you know, like just let it
Yeah.
all out? I could have done that.
Yeah, exactly. And made it like a group thing. So they understood. So here you can hear the understanding
Right,
theme in both those
right.
actions, and you could have said something like, listen, I'm really committed to a set that is full of peace and understanding. So if there's anything that's not that, it's going to stand out like a sore thumb. So
Right.
I am requesting that anybody who's not in the game of peace understanding go take five and come back in that game or whatever, it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
so there's lots of different actions that you could take when you're looking through that new lens.
Hmm.
So I would invite you to practice bringing forth peace and understanding over the next week or so, just at Starbucks. How
Right.
could you create that with your, your partner, with your mother, with what are some actions, and just start, kind of having that be your true north, like that's the heading for your boat. And notice
Right.
those times that you get hooked, that you
Mm,
get reactivated, and see if you can reroute to the peace and understanding road.
mm. I like that.
Does that support
True.
you?
It does. It does. It
Excellent.
does.
And I will send you that workbook. In fact, I'm going to also put it in the show notes for everybody so that they can download this. It's a basics of being unmessable with. So it's very, like simple, but it'll give you like the step-by-step process of seeing the physical reaction when you get messable with, creating a hack for it, and
Mm.
then going down that new road so that you can begin to exercise that flaccid muscle.
That little weak muscle.
And then when you notice, when you're dealing with people and worrying about, their happiness rather than yours, get out of that world and look up at your peace and understanding vision, because that's who you really are.
I know. I've just been defaulting to going
Yeah.
down instead of staying up and just like trusting the process, letting go, just being like, it's gonna be fine. I'm going to stay elevated.
And think about it though, it makes sense. You wouldn't trust your muscle if you hadn't used it for a year and it was weak. So you'd
True.
go to the muscle that works, right? And
That's
it
very true.
so this is again not through any fault of anybody's. It's just an underdeveloped muscle and it's developable.
Mm-hmm. So true.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for the opportunity to coach you a little bit.
No, thank you for giving me a space to be vulnerable. Like, I hope that one day I don't cry as much than I need to. Just leaving that for some sort of acting stuff. And,
Yeah,
it,
I think
it,
it's
it
fine
comes
to
up.
cry. It's just
I mean, it's,
leaking.
it's
It's
fine to
like,
cry. It's one of my indicators of my emotion, of my passion, or what's inside. I don't mind the crying. It's just like crying is also exhausting as well. You're
yes, it
not
can be. If you're
something,
really suffering, it can be. Yeah. But if you just
yeah,
cry for a moment, let yourself experience what it is, it passes pretty quick.
yeah. It's like rain.
Yeah, exactly. Rain from your eyes. It's God crying. That's what they used to tell me when I was little.
Yeah,
Oh, rain is God crying. I was like, well, he's very sad because it's raining
exactly.
a lot.
Oh, it's
Or
the worst
she's
thing
very
to say.
sad.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I would be sad too if I looked at the state of the world right now.
quite literally.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Let's
also feel like that has a lot to do with me too. Like I feel like I I know the word empath is like such a trendy word, but like I've been empathic since I was very very freaking young. And like not like the world was ever better, but like right now I could
yeah.
feel like the like dualities and just like the heaviness, and it's just like, oh
The
my
energy, if
goodness.
you're an empath, which my son Sage is also,
I
as
know
you,
he
yes,
is.
exactly. And
Yeah.
it's a heavy thing. So it's even more important to develop the muscle of your vision because Justina, the thing is, it's not just that you absorb people's energy. You have the opportunity to shift people's energy.
That part.
And that's really the game I'd invite you to play, is not so much protect yourself from people's energies, but be the energy of peace and understanding and have
Hmm.
that shift the planet.
Correct. I need to practice that muscle. I used to be so good at that. I've I've I have not been practicing that muscle for sure.
Okay, well, new game, game on.
Game on.
Game on. Okay, great. And thank you so much for being a guest on the show. And, for those of you that are listening or watching, depending on how you get your podcasts, we're going to put a link to Justina's podcast in the show notes. We're also going to put a link to the basics of being unmessable with in the show notes. And, if you got value, if anything moved you or touched you or open something up for you in this episode, I would invite you not only to rate it and review it, absolutely, but share it. Share it with someone who you think it could make a difference with. The messages today in this episode, there are some real jewels from today. So please share the episode with people in your life, and we'll see you on the next episode of Be Unmessable With.